So Chad asked us to talk about what CORS is. Peaches and I were going through the other day, and Kyle came in the room and drew all these diagrams on the board, and just like in this whirlwind was like, I don't know why you guys have your client and your server set up on the same thing. He said I would separate them out into two different domains, and Nick and I were just like, what? So he said basically you just use CORS. So what CORS is cross-origin resource sharing. And in a lot of browsers, Chrome specifically, it'll allow you to bring over like other websites, images to other web pages and things like that. But what it won't allow you to do is bring over entire blocks of information from a different host. That's just a security thing. They don't want you just going over to a different domain and just having access to that entire site on your web page. So we set up CORS as an NPM module. There is an NPM module for literally everything. But if you guys think back to the Heroku app that we had, the CORS Heroku model is basically just this NPM package. And all it does is send another header in the request that allows your permission to say, hey, this site is cool. Getting a little bit more into CORS real quick before Nick gets into his thing. You can decide where specifically the requests are going to go and come from. So you can set a specific site and only that site to be allowed. So you could set up your server to be a little bit more secure. And the idea behind this was now, as Nick's going to walk everybody through, is we have our database set up on our Express server, and we're running our client with Light server. And that allows everything to be more modularized, everything to be more separate. You'll see how the client has no idea what's going on in the API, and the API has no idea what's going on in the client. That allows the request to be RESTful, and we'll get into it.
So basically, you just npm install CORS. But normally in like an app that we've been making, you just have your database and all your routes all on the same port along with the front end side of it. So basically all this is doing, it's the same thing we've been doing, but you just separate them out. So I made this little app that's just pulling from this database. So this database is on 5052, and then this is on 3023. So it's just like in the Q1 projects where you're pulling from an external API. But it's something that, like, an advantage of doing this is, like, if you wanted to use this database for another app, it would just be the same URL, and you could use all the same routes instead of pulling from, like, a fully built-out app. All this is just a database, and I'll show you how to set it up. Super simple. So all you have to do is npm install CORS, and then you just require it, and do app.use. And then, yeah, and then, where's it at? So we set it up so npm start here is running our server index, which is where all of our database side stuff is, and then Light server is running the front end, and then you can just, so we have it split up into server and client here, and then you just go into client and run Light server, and it'll run all the files within the client folder off the index.html.
The only thing to remember is when you go into your clients, when you want to run Light server, just get into that actual folder and then do Light server, because otherwise it's going to look for the index.js. It's going to hit the first one that it finds, or your app.js, and that'll run into a problem. We ran into this issue so Brooks did that Express setup, right, on how to set up this stuff using Express, and we kept running into the issue of it just kept trying to send the index file, and it would only send a static web page. And what that had done was basically said that, hey, this is a static server. This page is never going to change. And in reality, we don't need that. We have Angular for the client side, and now you have this for your data on your server side. And I don't know. I just thought it was cool to be able to type in, type in a local host name and actually see your JSON object without Postman. Like, that's yours. You can create a CARS API now. You can create a Rockies API now and link it, sell it, do whatever you want with it. I just thought that was really cool.
Can you guys walk through a little more where both of your app.js's are and where you're actually separating them?
Sure. All right, so we have two folders. Is that what you're asking, like file structure-wise? Like what is?
Yeah, what's where?
So this is all one project. You could do it in two separate projects if you want, but so we have client here, which client is just like our Angular index and whatnot. So it's all just the front end stuff, HTML and JavaScript. And then in server here, we have our migrations, our seeds, our routes, and then our index.js, so your app.js, and your connects file. So anything database related will be in the server file. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And is there a different index for your front end? there different index.js or app.js for your front end?
So we called it. What would you call
I
it?
have
Module.
card. Well, yeah. I mean, we've got
Yeah.
like the normal like. That's our like front end JavaScript for our route.
Yeah, but like, where did you set up the port for the front end?
You don't. So because you're doing light server, you
So,
don't need to do that.
Yeah. Well, light server finds the port and finds your index file for you and serves it. That's why. So for us to run light server here, we have to go into client and then app and then run light server within the app directory. Because then it'll find the index.html and serve it from there.
Does that make sense?
So you're not setting up a port for the front end.
No, light server does that for you. So I'll show you. So
What exactly is CORS doing? Like, I understand like you're separating out like
So-
the different files.
So if you tried to, I don't know if you guys remember when we would try to do things with certain API requests, it would come back with CORS error. And all CORS is, like you can set these up separately and you can write your own CORS, but just built-in browsers won't allow you to just go pull like all sets of data from another local host or like another domain. They don't like it. I mean, it's dangerous, I guess, and so you need CORS to get around that. And that's just to say, hey, this website or this local host, like this domain, has permission, and it's okay to go ahead and take this data. And like I said, it looks like a whole bunch of black magic, but in reality, all it's doing is it's adding another header onto your header request, and it's just saying, hey, this is cool, go ahead and do it, and it overwrites Google Chrome, and Google Chrome allows you to do it.
like
So, I guess my question, like, so why couldn't we just like, separate our existing file structure into just separate folders? Where, you know, is it because like we're using the static server for like the search in public, so everything has to be a public folder?
Well,
Find it?
I mean, these are on two completely different URLs. So to be able to pull this data from this URL and have it on your like front end on your other URL, you have to have CORS, or Google Chrome will say like CORS error, like that's not allowed. So CORS brings it in and says like this is safe to do, like it's set up in this app.
So you don't necessarily need this just to have a
No, you could have.
file structure.
Correct.
Yeah, you could have this
Correct.
set up like this. You just wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to get this data here if we didn't have CORS.
Right. Yeah. CORS isn't what allows us to separate it out. You can separate it out anyway. Kyle was saying, and Chad was saying that this is a representation of microservices, and you can modularize this down even smaller. But what it allows to do is to say, like, you have a website and a phone, and they all want to come to the same API. This allows them to act differently. He said that this is like by modularizing your app, by building up into tiny components, people can now work on it separately as well. You guys have the static public folder set up right now that requires the API to do all these things. You can just mock that if you separate it out, and people can work on different objects.
So does this also help with like separation of concerns? Like I said, they know exactly if there's an error, you know what's coming from the server.
It's also yes, and it's also just a lot easier to look at. Like
Yeah.
this is my client, this is my server. They don't know what each other are doing. So do I need to make a route on my server or my client to get here?
It was really confusing at first for me when I was laying out the Reddit clone and we were like walking through the routes, and I was like, I don't understand this path and this route. Like it was just getting like hurt in my brain trying to think about how it all acted on the same server, and what was going on where. And by doing this, like we were able to just walk through the other day of just like where everything is specifically in time. Is it on your client or is it on your server? And it's really confusing because you think about quarter two, everything's rendered on the server. Like we set up an API, but you don't really, it's not like a real API because everything's done on the server. You don't really get to see anything else. And here you can see, all right, cool, this is like my web page is loading, but there's no data on there or whatever. And you can really kind of exactly separate out what's going on.
Where are you calling on your client to grab information from this port?
So for example, this GET request is just calling the API/CORS from the local host, which is this URL.
So could you have just separated that into two completely? You could have separated your whole server out into its own
Yep.
complete like file.
This could be its own
Yeah.
app.
Kyle
And
said
then-
that.
That is its own.
Yeah, Kyle
Yeah.
said that.
Yep.
Yeah, that in reality, he said like these shouldn't even be in the same repo. He said they usually are separate repos.
Right.
Tom.
No, that was essentially it.
Oh, okay.
You keep saying server, you keep saying client, but what's not really being driven home is these are two separate
Yeah.
things. This is a server, that is a server.
Which is the whole
They're
point of
just-
doing
they're
this,
just
yeah.
showing up on your computer on different ports, same computer.
Yeah.
They are actually, if you look at it almost in a physical sense, this is the web server.
Well, in a real production environment, this API would be on one server and your client's on another server
Right.
pulling from that.
Yeah,
Right, and that's all I'm saying, is
Yeah.
it's just, in terms of just
Yeah.
putting it out there, server client, all this other stuff, no, this is almost two separate boxes.
Yeah.
And you're actually able to access them through one interface to do this.
and that's the real definition of model view of MVC, of model view Cthulhu, is you can now really see how your client page, like your actual Angular page, should really never care what the hell's going on inside of it. We host a lot of our data when we're learning this stuff right there on your GET request or right there in your controller. And now we've taken that data and we put it over here in the model. And now we use the controller to take that data and plug it in. And all this thing knows is whatever we're telling it to know. It stays exactly the same, and it only changes when we change the model.
I was going to ask, just kind of refreshing my memory about the CORS error. Is it by virtue of having a certain amount of data from another URL being brought into your original page, or like I thought what we were originally getting that for was like a difference in protocols. Like you were trying to pull in an HTTP resource when your main address was HTTPS. Do you know? I mean, are you dealing with that at all here, or is it just because it's a different? You have a bunch of data coming from another source.
When we first started, I thought the same thing that Justin and Devin were thinking, that we just like, we needed this to separate this out. In reality, all this is just a permission to pull data from a different website. Yeah, that's all it is.
Google Chrome or whatever you're using will stop you from doing that.
Yeah,
so
and that's
CORS
what CORS
allows
error
it.
is.
And there's like a bunch of other stuff you can do with CORS. Like,
Yeah.
you can set like only like from this URL can I pull data so that it's more secure. Like there's a ton of documentation on it, but
Do you know how to serve? So right now you're pulling off the local host, but to serve that API,
you would deploy it.
Yeah.
Just to Heroku, and then you can pull. Yeah.
and then you would just change that to whatever the web address is.
You would
Yeah.
have, in reality, you'd have production
It
development
would
at
always
that point.
it would always be this endpoint, but it's gonna be whatever's before it is like wherever it's being hosted.
What's up, Lynn?
It would be really helpful to see what it would actually look like decoupled into separate applications, and what files and folders are going in your server app and which are going in your client app.
Sure.
That would really, I think, for me, it would set in how you actually separate CORS.
Sure.
Because right now I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I get what's going on, but I can't switch my app over to CORS.
Well,
Yeah.
Conceptually, what it would be is, so this client app or this client folder would be this entire app along with its own package.json, and then server would be everything in server would be in a different app with its own package.json. One has light server, one has npm start or whatever you want to use.
Would you need the node modules in the server?
Yeah, they would each have their own dependencies. So like on the server side, you'd have Express, Connect, CORS. You have all this. You wouldn't have dependencies on the other ones. You probably wouldn't have node modules.
On the client.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we're not using anything. We're
yeah,
not using
because
any
all
node
these,
modules.
all those dependencies are servers.
And so what's cool if you
Except for
look
light
at, can you pull up your Reddit one real quick?
Reddit.
So when we did this the other day, the dependencies, and then your package.json. So check this out. So you can give specific dev dependencies. So that's the only thing that we need for our client is light server. And so when you would push this up to production, they would be like, okay, cool, we don't need this. But for developer, you have to be running light server to mock the web page. And you can separate them out that way, which I thought was really cool. These dependencies at the bottom are the only. So here are all the things that your server needs to run. So your npm modules. This guy's the only npm module we need, and that's only so we can actually view it. And that's how you separate that out. And to further go for like the Heroku app is just basically what we have now minus our API. It's just a CORS module, and that's why you're able to just type it in because they have all of that stuff put up in a deployed to Heroku. It just allows you to go around whatever you need to go around.
So to actually set up CORS, the only thing you need is to call it obviously and save it to your package.json. But in that server JS file, all you need to do is just put the require and the
Yep.
You require and then use it as a function.
Yep.
Yeah.
if you wanted to do anything else, like Nick said, there's all sorts of stuff about. Phil was telling me about like different things you can do with it, but you can make it basically. It would just be more secure, more dynamic. In reality, if you're just trying to call it to an API, that's all you need. And that's
So,
what, yeah.
Like this way we have it set up. That's just saying like you can get data from anywhere right now. But you can set it up so like no, only data from this URL can come into my page.
So this is like best practice. If you're setting up your own API, you can use CORS. Essentially, it makes it more scalable.
Yeah.
I saw it was cool, like I said, to be able to see like an actual API and like I'll have that JSON object, like see that, and like that's the shit we've been working with in Q1, and now we created that. I thought that was really cool. It's like conceptually. What's up, Taylor?
So you just said like you can set it up so you know only data can come from this. So are you setting up, the restrictions on the server side? And you're saying
Yeah, it would.
these websites can get access to this data?
It would be right here where we have this. It's just a longer function, so like something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And so
I don't know what all this is doing, but
what would happen is, so these things down here are just changing the header, and that would be specific requests that come over based on.
Queries and stuff like
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go, where's the wiki? Did you still have the wiki open? There's a really cool, on the wiki, there's a really cool image that kind of explains everything out that's going on in a nice little image form. And you can see, cool. So how it adds the extra header request that comes in. That's literally everything that's going on here. This is just how CORS works, conceptually. So I don't know. This helped me understand it a lot. And it's just funny because we started off thinking that, hey, we need CORS to separate it out, and then kind of figuring out what CORS was to being able to set the API. So I don't know. It was just neat.
I did not understand what your question was, Taylor. Can you guys reiterate that?
So she was just asking like where you would call the like parameters to set it up, so like you can only pull from this URL, or like how to change like the functionality of CORS. And I was just saying it would just go right here, but the function would have like
And then you might add certain parameters that like with the use of the API documentation as long as goes out. So if you're creating API,
see like here's the example I was talking about. So you can do CORS options and give it an origin, and that origin is where it's going to be able to pull data from and nowhere else. Get out of here.
You could do multiple different origins there, all within. Is that an object? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see they set up the errors here as well too. You would put that in your server and be like, you don't have permission or whatever's going on. In reality, your browser takes care of that for you. It'll say CORS error. So if you want to be more user friendly.
So when you pointed to in your Atom where that was, can you go back to that? So
and this is where you'd set up your API key if you wanted other people to be able to access it.
Yeah. This would probably be done in a separate file. You'd probably do
You
like
probably
a
have
CORS.
your own CORS file.
Yeah, CORS file, and then require that file back over here to use CORS and plug it into the function.
And you just call that in where it says use
Mhm.
CORS and then inside the parameter of CORS.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in your index.js to answer your question, or app.js.
Yeah, it would be just like, so would you have your database file that you required? So it would be like this. So that's how we have access to our database. And then like we require that over on our index page. That way we have access to it in our routes. It would be the exact same thing. And you could probably configure it right there on your index.js, but I think it would look cleaner if there'd probably be a whole bunch of shit in that function. You probably want it on a separate page. Cool. Yeah, sure. Right on. Thank you guys. Good job, buddy. Live coding.
just clicking around this time.
That can be stressful too.
Yeah. I always feel like every time I'm up there, I'm just like flying through windows.
Space travel.
Yeah.